1999 will be remembered by Canadians for an extraordinary event. Canada was involved in the most recent large-scale refugee assistance effort. According to an estimate by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, more than 860,000 Kosovo Albanians were being driven out of their land by the Serbian armed forces in an apparent effort to cleanse Kosovo from its ethnic Albanians. A human tragedy of apocalyptic dimensions unfolded, resulting in the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War.
When the plane landed, the reception was so warm, we felt like we were coming to a wedding and us being the most respectable guests.
Upon arrival in Canada, things were different, of course, because Canada was organized to helping us, so like they accommodate us on military base of Borden, which now became second home for next, again, month and a half here in Canada.
They talk to you. With the beginning of NATO bombing in March of 1999, what we saw was a humanitarian catastrophe that was without parallel in any of our experience.
It was the product of a horrible revival of Nazi ideology within Serbia. A terrible thing to happen after the Serbs had suffered so much during the war from the Nazi occupation. They were led astray and adopted these same racist policies against the Albanians that the Nazis used against the Jews, calling Albanians subhumans and Turks and threatening to build more mosques in Belgrade and et cetera, et cetera.
Various segments of Serb paramilitary and military forces would show no mercy even to young, innocent children. Known as one of the survivors of the Garden Massacre in Podujevo, Saranda brings back the memories of a horrible hate crime. 19 frightened children and their mothers were lined up against the wall and sprayed with machine gun fire. Miraculously, she and 4 of her cousins would escape death.
When everything happened, when I lost my family during the war, it was on the 28th of March, 1999. My aunt was crying, she was talking to them in Serbian, and what I could understand was that they're only children. They shot her in front of us.
According to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, even before NATO's bombing of Serbia, 200,000 Albanians had fled Kosovo. The fierce conflict that had started in 1998 between the Kosovo Liberation Army and the Serbian police, army, and paramilitary forces made Albanian civilians an easy target of beatings, rapes, and killings. The massacre of Racak of January 1999 was the latest carnage.
Today we stand united against those who committed this crime. This crime against humanity. The deaths in Racak demand justice, and justice must be seen to be done.
The condemnation by the United Nations was meant to send a strong signal to the Serbian leadership. But it would take more than just a war of words to convince the defiant Milosevic to withdraw his military machine from Kosovo. In the meantime, oppression and violence made life miserable for Albanians.
Simple to describe this will be two words probably: anger and fear. Anger because of all those atrocities what on daily basis were happening by Serbs police and military force all over Kosovo, and fear because we fear every day for our kids will be returning safe home, and our family had a fear of what will happen to us, or will I return from work safe at home.
On March 24th, 1999, after repeated threats, NATO launched an air campaign against military and civic targets in Serbia, which lasted 78 days. A furious Milosevic appeared determined to finish his job by expelling all Albanians from Kosovo, pushing them south and west to the neighboring Macedonia and Albania.
They told us to leave our house within 4 to 5 minutes and not to close the doors. Straight to the railway stations, get lost, they ordered us. When we got there, we saw a huge crowd. Around 3 in the morning, they put us in freight trains. Through an opening, we saw dead bodies as we passed the village of Lipian.
The coexistence between Albanians and Serbs in the Balkans has not been an easy one.
Oh, it's been extremely difficult. There are profound historical reasons for this. First of all, that the Serbs, as they were invading, pushed the Albanians or Illyrians as they were up and out of their traditional homes up into the highlands and the mountains. That was the beginning of the bad blood.
Well, I think when you read the media, you get the impression that the Kosovo issue is quite recent. As a historian, let me stress that the Kosovo crisis goes along with the creation of Yugoslavia after the First World War, or was originally the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. In any Yugoslavia, whether it was the first Yugoslavia between the First and Second World War, or the Yugoslavia that Tito created, or the third Yugoslavia that emerged under Milošević, or the Yugoslavias that emerged even after Milošević, there was always a Kosovo question. So Kosovo has deep historic roots, and I would certainly stress that for Albanian people living in Kosovo, Yugoslavia was never a solution to any of their problems. For the most part, Albanians suffered in a contemporary sense and in a historic sense in Yugoslavia. And what we're seeing now in the present day sense is finally what we hope is a solution to this long-term, now century-old dilemma of Albanians living in Kosovo under essentially a type of occupation.
During the rise of nationalism in the Balkans in the 19th century, Albanians' very existence was put in danger. The revival of a greater Serbia, a modern resurrection of the medieval Serb Empire, refueled ethnic tensions. The pressure from the great powers and Russia assisted the Serbs in breaking away and gaining independence from the Ottoman Empire. On the other hand, the presence and the rights of Albanians in Kosovo were ignored. This was clearly manifested at the Treaty of London and the Conference of Bucharest in 1913, held soon after the defeat of the Turkish army during the First Balkan War. In these two major international conferences, the great powers recognized the Serbian occupation of Kosovo. The perception of Albanians as Turks played an important role in this decision. Although Albanians had adopted the religion of their conquerors, they preserved their own distinct language and culture, two major marks of their identity.
As a specialist on Albania and Kosovo, and more generally Albanians, I tend to view Albanians as a secular people, in the sense that Albanians have their religion. The thing that intrigues me most about people's knowledge of Albanians is that they do tend to view them as a Muslim people. And this is a mistake, largely to me, because it neglects the tremendous religious diversity that exists in Albanian lands. I point to Albania as a great example, not just of the presence of Islam, but the presence of Catholicism and, of course, Albanian Orthodoxy. Albania has always established itself as a country that showed tremendous religious tolerance. And one thing, if you know Albanian history well, you know that Albanians are not unified by religion. The idea of Albania as being a Muslim country is used often against them in regrettable ways by some countries in the region to paint them with one single brush, but the Islamic identification has also worked in their favor on occasion. So it goes both ways, but in general, when I think of Albanians, I think of a secular people with a Muslim majority, with a Catholic population, with a Protestant population now, with an Orthodox population. So I view it as a religiously diverse part of the Balkans.
"1999 will be remembered by Canadians for an extraordinary event. Canada was involved in the most recent large-scale refugee assistance effort. A human tragedy of apocalyptic dimensions unfolded, resulting in the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War.
When the plane landed, the reception was so warm, we felt like we were coming to a wedding and us being...
According to an estimate by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, more than 860,000 Kosovo Albanians were being driven out of their land by the Serbian armed forces in an apparent effort to cleanse Kosovo from its ethnic Albanians.